So I'll start off with a little bit about me. Mary Moorehead is my name, and I've been challenged with a stutter since about the age of 7 or 8. And primary school, college, job interviews, everyday speaking was difficult. And it was a battle. It was a conflict between me and my stutter every day, working out what I was going to say, how I was going to say it, but most of the time could not. And I joined the McGuire Programme in 2009 because I'd had enough of my stutter controlling my life. And learning a new way to speak, a new technique to control my speech, gave me the belief and the confidence that I could speak without struggle. Instead of my psychological mind telling me that I could not make that phone call or I could not order that latte coffee. And the McGuire technique, it's not a cure. It's just a means of controlling how you want to speak. And for me, joining the McGuire Programme with the amazing support network was life-changing. And without that programme, I probably would never have gone on to a Zoom meeting like this. So I'm really happy with how my speech is going. So as I said, we have three guys. We have Robert, Michael, and Darren. And I'm going to get them to introduce themselves and describe one incident that convinced them to share their story. And we'll also see on the screen a cover image of the book that they have written. So we'll start with Robert.
Thank you, Mary. My name is Robert O'Brien, and I did the McGuire Programme in 2003. And it feels like a lifetime ago. And it's really amazing to see familiar faces on Zoom right now. So I was dealing with my stutter since about the age of 6. And I tried speech therapy as a child and then as a teenager in school. And I discovered the McGuire Programme when I had graduated university, when I was 24 or 25. And I realized that I couldn't give a presentation. I had avoided giving presentations in college. And the telephone was a problem, and my speech was very much holding me back. I was a covert stutterer, so I could hide it most of the time, but I was struggling a lot with that. So I discovered the McGuire Programme, and I discovered freedom in my speech. That led me to train as a teacher, which then led to Toastmasters and acting school. And I decided it would be a wonderful idea to come to Vancouver and be an actor here in Vancouver. And my speech held me back here as well. And the incident that caused me to write Just One More Drive was a suicide attempt in my dad's race car in the M3 of the cover of the book that you can see now. Obviously, I didn't succeed in killing myself and was angry that I'd failed at even doing that. And the book began as a journal. It began as a very private journal. I went to counseling and I wanted to go back to the very beginning, to figure out where everything went wrong. And that's where the book came from. And over the last few years, it's become a part of my life, a passionate part of my life, because my journey is our journey. And it deals with not only stuttering, but mental health and ownership of ourselves and learning for myself to become my own best friend. And that is me.
Thank you, Robert. And we'll move on to Michael.
Michael O'Shea is my name. I started stuttering at the age of 4. Severe beating from a nun in school was the trigger. And I stuttered out of control until the age of 44. I am now 66. Why I wrote the book was I realized that, number one, I had a story to tell. And it would do me good to tell it. Number two, which was equally as important, I had a lot of people to thank in the stuttering community worldwide. And number three, I found within myself that it would be a big, big injustice if I did not share my experiences, did not share my knowledge gained, not only my personal knowledge, but knowledge gained from other people. And to share that so it may entice them to write their story. We all have a story, and all of our stories are important. The third reason was to educate the stuttering community. The commonality of stuttering, the commonality of isolation, the commonality of holding back, to tell people they weren't on their own. Those were the 3 main reasons for writing the book. It was never to make me rich. It was never to brag that, hey, look at me, I'm a fantastic person. I wrote a book. That was never on the agenda and still is not on the agenda to this day. Michael O'Shea.
Thank you, Michael. And Darren.
Thanks for that. Darren Benham speaking. So my stammer was there from the very start, right through school, university, and working. I did multiple forms of speech therapy in the past. None worked. My life was ruined by my stammer, my negativity, my self-loathing. I wrote a book to show my kids the real me, what their father was really like, what went on in my mind, because at that time, my physical and mental health were really poor, and I really didn't want to live much longer. So for me, writing the book was very selfish thing to do. Thank you.
I think it takes a lot of courage to write your story into a book. And it's also so good to get your story out there to other people that are living challenged with a stutter. Because like you guys and me and many people, it was never spoken about. It was the elephant in the room. Everyone knew that you were struggling, but nobody said a word. So as I said earlier on this special awareness day, to let people know that if they are struggling with their stutter, they're not on their own. So fantastic. And I have to say, guys, your titles of your books are so interesting and intriguing. So I think they all have to be put on the list of books to read. I have read Michael's book of his personal journey, and it is also a must read. So we're going to now, or I'm going to now ask the three guys some questions. And as I say, if anyone has a question, put it in the chat box. We probably will have time later on and go over these. So, Michael, how has your stutter made you a better person?
Michael O'Shea, why has my stutter made me a better person? Verbally, it crippled me. It was the only thing in my life that made me feel vulnerable. So to eradicate that vulnerability or part of it, I needed to overcompensate in everything I'd done to feel normal. Because as it says in the book, I never felt normal when I stuttered.
Yeah.
Never. And that vulnerability, what did I do? I isolated myself. I didn't talk to people. I didn't express. And I learned very, very early on in life to write a journal, to plan. Everything in my life was planned, created visions, created a plan to achieve that vision. That's how my life worked. And empathy, massively. I'd be empathetic to people. I don't look at stuttering as a disability, and I think it's an awful word to use for stuttering. Stuttering to me was always a difference. Other than that, I was no different from any human being that walked on the earth. So to me, it's a feeling of difference. And I've met people from all over the world, and when I explained it that way, suddenly they changed their frame of their stuttering to difference. But overcompensation was the big one. Empathy and understanding. And I realized very, very early on that I had three talents, skills that were honed so sharp, they were much, much higher and much, much stronger than normal speakers. The skill of awareness. My awareness to this day is red hot. My skill of observation. I observe and see things, I think, that people don't see until maybe 2 or 3 minutes after I see them and feel them. Feel it. And the other one, of course, is visualization. Regarding my speech, I visualized in the way that it brought me down. Avoidance, holding back, visualized in the negative. When I learned a lot about myself, I turned that around and made that a powerful part of my journey out of stuttering. So it made me aware of everything I had and everything, as soon as I started working on my speech, everything that I could achieve. And that gave me the vision. Michael O'Shea.
Thank you, Michael. Robert, what about you? Has your stutter made you a better person?
Robert O'Brien. Yes, it has. I agree with everything Michael said about awareness and empathy. For me, as well as a stutter, I'm also gay. And I was dealing with both of those at the same time. And I always felt different. I never felt I fit in anywhere. If I was having a good speech day, it would be a gay issue, and then it would be a speech issue, or it would be some issue. And how my stutter has made me a better person is through this whole process of therapy and exploration of myself, empathy. My own perception of myself had to radically change. And by writing a book, I had to sort the story out in my own head. And really, the biggest takeaway for me, selfishly, was to be my own best friend. I was so critical of myself. I was so critical. And that is in part, I think, what led to my despair. Because everyone wanted to help me and tried to help me, but I couldn't let them in. And that's how it's made me a better person. Without my stutter, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be talking to you. I wouldn't have met any of you people. And I wouldn't, as Michael said, had a story to share. Because sharing that is also putting ourselves on the line. The vulnerability can be nauseating to some people. So my stutter has made me a better person. Robert O'Brien.
Thank you, Robert. Very personal, as I say, very raw, telling your story. And it's really good to get the message out there that people who stutter are not on their own anymore. Darren, has your stutter made you a better person?
No. Just to say, I really don't share the lad's sentiments. My stammer made me shy, negative, very moody, and ruined my life.
Mm.
For me, there was a massive loss of potential. Lots of years wasted lying, running from the phone, from meetings, not saying my kids' names because I just couldn't speak. So for me, no, it's a daily challenge, not just to control my speech, but my mentality, my sense of shame, my sense of guilt, my negativity. So for me, no, my focus is on control, being the best father, the best partner, the best worker I can, using my tools, using my weapons. But I certainly don't think my stammer has made me a better man.
Thank you, Darren. Great honesty and putting yourself out there. So I have another question. Robert, what would you like fluent speakers to know about living with a stutter? Can they help or can they hurt? And by that I mean, can they do the wrong thing by trying to help?
I suppose we all know that when we have a stutter, people try to help us. They make phone calls for us. They finish our sentences. They really try to help. But to answer your question, for me, I think it's the understanding. I think it's important for fluent speakers to know that the stutter is not going away. Like you said, it's not a cure. And there are good days and bad days. And there are times where we'll be taken out. We'll be upset over a bad speaking situation. And in those cases, my experience in life, not just with my stutter, but with everything, is to be heard. So we need to tell people what we need and for them to hear us. So if we're having a bad day, maybe we just need an hour to sit, to process, and then we come back. There's nothing to fix. There's no panic. There's no drama. That's what I would like fluent speakers to know. Robert O'Brien.
Michael, what would your take be on that question?
Michael O'Shea, from my experience, and one of the reasons I wrote the book was to educate my listeners. So I took it upon myself that it was my responsibility to educate my listener to who I was and to assertively accept myself for who I am to this day. Am I this famous fluent speaker? No, I'm certainly not. But I'm very, very lucky with the help and support of the stuttering community. 98% of the time, I am portraying my authentic self. I speak the way that I want to speak. And also, if I feel I need to use technique, deliberate dysfluency, voluntary stammering, or create a conversation that brings in my past. And it is in my past. Stuttering is not in my future. Wouldn't dream of it. And there is approach avoidance conflicts there that I have to make clear to myself when I'm working with the stuttering community. I call it self-one. When I'm operating in self-one, there isn't a thought. So people ask me, am I cured of stuttering? I say, no, I'm not. But I am cured of the psychological impact of stuttering. So it's my responsibility. And to this day, even with stuttering awareness and mental well-being, this is all about education for me. And for getting people to express themselves, to educate the people around them. Where do you start? It starts with the family network. And it moves out from there. Michael O'Shea.
Thank you, Michael. And Darren, what would you like fluent speakers to know living with a stutter?
Yeah, sure. That when we speak when we push past a block or struggle, that what you're saying is just a small part of what really happens. We know that most of the things are psychological. So you're not saying my fear, my shame, my guilt, my nervousness. You're just saying the physical component parts of a multitude of psychological things when we speak. Second is, give me time to pause, to formulate. Allow me time to use my full range of weapons. Listen to what I'm saying, because what I'm saying is very, very important. Darren Benham.
Thank you, Darren. So, Michael, what was the most unexpected benefit of learning to control your speech? The unexpected benefit.
Michael O'Shea, that's a very good question, Mary, because it would be very, very difficult for me to go through the hundreds of benefits. But the principal one is that I can be my authentic self every day regarding my verbal communication and regarding the person that I am. Darren mentioned earlier on about I was a liar. I was a manipulator. I was a master manipulator of getting people to do things for me. They didn't even know what they were doing. That never felt right. Prime example would be when my children were young and they'd want an ice cream. In Ireland, we call it a 99. It's an ice cream cone and it has a chocolate flake in it. So I couldn't say 99. I couldn't say chocolate flake. So I would manipulate my eldest son to come with me into the shop and he would order it. At 4 years of age, manipulating your own children. That went back further to manipulating my parents, manipulating my sister, manipulating my friends. I was a master at it. Did that lie easy with me? It certainly did not. It destroyed me. It destroyed me. So there's hundreds, but the number one is that it made me feel the person that I really am. I know who I am. Back then, I was this person who stuttered. I was this person who was the businessman who made money, who was driven because of the other part, overcompensation. So I learned a lot from overcompensation as well. But to be my authentic self means a lot to me. And that would be it for me. Yeah.
Thank you, Michael. Robert.
Thank you, Mary. Similar to Michael, the manipulation was part of my answer. And for me, it's been about letting go. So there's a part of me that's embarrassed that I came to Vancouver to be an actor, because I amn't an actor. I trained, but I didn't make it as an actor. And in part, it was because of the stutter. And I had to let that go. I was manipulating. I wanted to be a fluent speaker. I wanted to prove that I was better than other recovering stutterers, and I was going to be perfect in my speech. And coming to Vancouver was literally and figuratively the furthest I could come to, do that. And it was manipulation. I was lying to everyone and myself, and I was hiding, and having to let that go has taken me years. And there's, like Darren said, regret for lost opportunity, lost relationships, lost situations. And I can choose to hold on to that and punish myself, or I can let it go. And that's been a skill I've been working on like a muscle. Let it go. And what remains is my authentic self. What remains is me. And that is enough. Finally, after 44 years, I can say that's enough. Do I know myself fully? No, I'm not there yet. But I've never been more at ease in my own skin, whether I'm stuttering or not. Robert O'Brien.
Okay. Darren, have you anything to add to that question?
Not really. The two lads nailed it. For me, one of the best things was I did a mass reading. So it was the first time my mother, my sisters really saw me stand up and read and command the room. So while I was reading, I just looked up and saw my mother from the corner of my eye, and she just looked up and smiled. And for me, she had a really tough life with me, with my father. So to give my mother a moment like that, to me is worth more than winning the lottery. So yeah, that was a great moment for me anyway.
Thank you, Darren. And I do say that when we can all say our name without struggle or blocking, it is the greatest feeling ever. Is there anyone on the call here would like to answer that? What was the most unexpected benefit of learning to control your speech?
How's things, Mary? Rory West.
Hi, Rory.
I was going to hold back there because I'm always the one speaking at this. I suppose the unexpected benefit to me when I joined the McGuire Programme in 2007, not expecting, is the friends and the community that I've met. As a person before that, I didn't really know a lot of people, if any, that stuttered, and it's amazing now to see the actual support out there and campaigns like Michael's involved in the last week that just reaches out to lots of people. And to me, friends, like there's so many on this call this evening that I would call very close friends. And even my partner, Cara, beside me, who I met on the McGuire Programme. So that was unexpected to me. We always see the negative stuff around stuttering, but the community is unbelievable. So thanks for that.
Thank you, Rory. Anyone else before we move on to the next question?
Damien Slevin. Opportunity to speak. So I was very much like people have described, holding back, keeping very quiet. And after McGuire, I joined Toastmasters, and I worked through the committee and eventually became president. And I would never have considered myself to be a president of a speaking club. And we had an anniversary, the oldest Toastmaster club in Britain. And I was the MD of the evening. And I look, fortunately, my sister, who lives in New Zealand, was over at that time, and my parents long gone, but to have my sister there was really special too, to remember all the problems I've had in the past.
Thank you, Damien. And
Damien Slevin.
Robert, what is the funniest thing that ever happened to you as a result of your stutter?
Off the cuff, I suppose for me, with the stuttering and the McGuire Programme, I was blown away by the use of the tools and suddenly being fluent. And on one occasion, I blagged my way onto the afternoon show, which was an RTE afternoon talk show, as a soap opera critic. Now, a friend had said I should do it. I had never watched a soap in my life, so I blagged my way on. And I told people in my McGuire support meeting, and they said, "You're a mad thing," which I was, because it quickly became obvious I didn't know soap operas, and I think I scored 1 out of 10 correct answers. But the thing was, I didn't feel shame. I was like, I've just spoken on public television. And it was only afterwards I thought, oh, maybe that wasn't such a good idea. And my best friend who lives in Leeds keeps bringing it up. Every few years, she'll shout the name Fred, because that was the only answer I got right. And that's one of them, but there are many. And just to say, learning to laugh at it is important, because it can be quite funny. Robert O'Brien.
Thanks, Robert. Michael, has anything funny happened to you as a result of your stutter?
Michael O'Shea, you're really working the memory bank now, Mary. I was just thinking of it when Robert was speaking there. It wasn't that I wasn't listening to you, Robert, I was, but going back over my life, there's some very, very fun incidents. And I suppose one that really sticks out is that my grandfather was a farmer, and I had an uncle, he was a small farmer, and they would bring livestock to the marts every now and again, either to buy or to sell. But on the days that they were selling, I would be with him. And I was young at the time, I was only about 10 or 11. But at an auction, you'd have the auctioneer and he'd talk at 1,000 miles an hour. But if you were interested in an animal, or if it was okay that you sold an animal, if you were making a bid, you kind of held up your hand like that. So one day I was with my uncle, and my uncle was having a conversation with the farmer next to him, and I knew he was interested in buying an animal that was in the ring, but he was so engrossed with the conversation, he missed, and I started bidding on the animal. And I kept holding up my hand because I didn't have to speak. I didn't have to speak. So the animal went in all money. It was started at 25 pounds, and then it went to 26, and I went to 27, and went to 28, and I went to 29. But it should have stopped. The animal wasn't worth any more than 30 pounds. So the person that was really interested in buying the animal, he saw me that he was bidding against a child, basically, and he wasn't going to be showing up that he wouldn't buy the animal, that he'd leave the child beat him. So the highest bid went to 40, and I held up for 40. It was only then my uncle copped on. And he had to wave at the auctioneer and he had to shout at him, "He's not buying that, he's not buying that." And the livestock park was packed out. But I would meet people to this day that were at that, and they remember it. And they say to me, "Remember when you were a young fella and you bought that cattle, that I think it was a Frisian. You bought that Frisian for 40 pounds and your uncle nearly killed you." And that's why to say that is still a story within the family. So that was very, very funny. And it's not until years later that I thought I was doing my uncle a favor. So it's amazing how it goes. Yeah. But there's hundreds. I mean, there's hundreds, and a lot of the funny stories are in the book as well.
Thanks, Michael. I have to say, personally, I don't recall any funny stories about me and my stammer, which is actually quite sad because, as you say, Robert, it is good to laugh at yourself. But obviously I didn't think it was funny having a stammer. What about you, Darren?
Yeah, I mean, like the lads said, like so many stories actually. For me, what I used to do a lot were street contacts. So I'd walk into town and say, "Would you know the way to whatever?" People would look at me, and you can tell I'm from Dublin from the way I talk. So, "Would you know the way to O'Connell Street?" "What do you mean you don't know the way to O'Connell Street? It's only up the main road." So yeah, loads of times where lads would look at me and laugh and say, "What's your problem, man?" But yeah, no, loads of great times at support meetings and weekends, and yeah, really great memories.
Okay, thank you, Darren. And a question. Robert, how has writing your book changed you, or has it changed you?
It has changed me. I'm not as evolved as Michael, and I thought if I wrote my book, I would be famous like J.K. Rowling. I thought this is so great. I'm going to be rich and I'm going to buy the race car. And over the course of writing the book and having to really get clear on what the message is, I've had to really become a less selfish, self-obsessed person. And the nature of writing a book, for me, like when it's your autobiography, it is about you. In a very literal way, it's your story. But the last few years, I've had to really learn to just, let it all go. As I said, it's a common theme, but just, it's going to be what it is. People will get what they get. And for me, I would like to think I've become a better person. I would like to think that I've become more empathetic to other people. I've become less hurried to prove myself to other people. And I realize now, and even on events like this, it's the opportunity to educate, share, and connect, because we feel so disconnected. And I used to be so concerned with looking good, so sounding good and fluent, and proving to everyone. I felt I needed to prove. So the book has been a very cathartic experience for me, and I would like to think I've become a better human. Robert O'Brien.
Darren, has writing the book changed you?
Well, like Robert said, for me, it was very cathartic. But what I found out was it really brought me closer to my mother and sisters. I think they found out a lot more about me and what went on in my head. So, yeah, I think writing the book certainly changed me in terms of being a better son and a better brother.
Okay.
Darren Benham.
Thank you, Darren. And Michael.
Michael O'Shea, yeah, the point that Darren made last there, the biggest impact it had on me is it made me a better person. And the reasons for it are I met people outside of my bubble. I met people outside of my culture. It brought myself and my wife around the world twice, meeting fantastic people. But a byproduct of it is, and I only learned this by doing this, is the people of influence opened doors for me. They opened avenues for me.
Mm-hmm.
Suddenly I was the influential person in the parish, the influential person in the community. I was the only person who ever wrote a book. It gave me the opportunity to do presentations in schools, presentations to people who are studying speech and language, not only in my own country, but beyond. And I realized that we, the people who stutter, and I say this the whole time, and to all of you here who are challenged by stuttering, you are the world's expert on you as a person who's challenged by stuttering. There is no other expert. You are the one. And that was a huge thing. And when I met people in conferences, I would go searching for people who could educate me on the psychological part. on the psychological part. And I would buy them lunch. I would buy them coffee. I would bring them out to dinner. I spent $100 one time, which was a lot of money back then, on dinner with John Harrison. And that night, priceless. I couldn't put a value on the information and the challenge he gave me. The challenge he gave me was, he said, before we got into the taxi to go back to the hotel, he said, and he looked at me quite serious, and he said, Michael, when are you going to trust yourself to speak without technique?
Mhm.
And I said to him, what do you mean? He got into the taxi. That was his way of figuring it out. And that was a huge, huge light bulb moment. But yeah, book launches, my own community. My God, like having a book launch in Dublin on the day we launched the National Stuttering Awareness Day in Dublin, which the book promoted and paid for 10 years. 10 years, 100%. Okay, we got a small subscription from the Irish Stammering Association and from the McGuire Programme, but the rest went in. And I mean, to say that was a huge thing to me, and to still running the Irish Stammering Association, or running it now, that was a huge thing. And of course, the other one was to meet the fantastic people I met and still meet. That had a huge, huge impact on me. And to be able to have people coming to our home who came on holidays to Ireland who wanted to meet me. Like, why? I often looked at them and I was saying to myself, why do you want to meet Michael O'Shea? I thought that it was my job to go and meet them. But, you know, fantastic opportunities came my way because of it. And really, really left its mark on me. So I cried with people, I laughed with people, I listened to people for periods of time because I wanted them to tell their story. So it taught me the importance of listening to understand. So yeah, I've always maintained that if I went to university for 20 years, I wouldn't have learned what I know now, because it was done outside my bubble in the real world. And the commonalities of people who are challenged by stuttering. Some powerful, some which bring them down, and to be able to educate them on the difference. It's amazing. Michael O'Shea. I could go on. Michael O'Shea.
Thank you, Michael. And a question from Damien. Michael mentioned the trigger of his stammer was a beating at school. Do Robert and Darren have a trigger that they were aware of? And could we have it briefly answer that one, please? Robert.
Okay. Robert O'Brien. I'm never sure, but I think it was bullying in school. I was a very small, very shy, very quiet child, and I was bullied. And that put a lot of fear into me. I was terrified to open my mouth, to do anything in case I'd get bullied again. And I think if there was a trigger, I think that was probably it, because that fear has stuck with me. I still feel it to this very day. And I would say that was my trigger.
Okay. Darren.
Yeah, sure. For me, there were a couple of factors. One, I think it's largely genetic. And two, growing up, there was a lot of tension. And for me, being a very sensitive child, I fed off all of that form of tension. So those were my two triggers.
Okay, thank you. And we've almost reached the end of our time. And just want to say thank you to everyone who zoomed in tonight, to Robert, Michael, and Darren for sharing their story. It's very personal, very emotional, very sad. And it's really good to start to talk about living with a stammer so that other people will benefit. And also like to thank the two Zoom controllers behind the scenes there, doing a fantastic job. I'm really looking forward to reading Robert and Darren's books. I have read Michael's, great read, put it on your list. And thank you for inviting me to be a part of your meeting, something I never could have imagined that I would do. And it's only because of the McGuire Programme. So really, really grateful. Have enjoyed listening to all your stories. And all of the links were pasted there, I think, on the chat or on the shared screen to order your copy of these fantastic, intriguing books. And the last word to Robert. Have you anything to add?
I would just like to thank Michael, Darren, and yourself, Mary. This has been a real pleasure for me to plan, and I think it's a great way to mark International Stuttering Awareness Day, because as Michael said, it's about sharing our stories and letting people know that we're not alone. And it's also about meeting the people involved. And I would also like to thank Lynn and Kilmany, who are on Zoom, who are part of Tidewater Press, who have facilitated this whole discussion. So thank you very much, and a happy International Stuttering Awareness Day to everybody.